welcome to episode number 15 of When to Play. And today we're going to be looking at a Game of Thrones, the board game. This is by Fantasy Flight Games. So this game is pretty interesting for me. Shortly after I got into, playing board games, I kept hearing a Game of Thrones, you have to try it. And I inevitably did. I've played it now probably a dozen times. I love this game, but it's not for everybody. So you need to know what you're getting into with a Game of Thrones. The first thing I would say about a Game of Thrones is that if you enjoy the series on HBO, if you have enjoyed the books, then you will enjoy this game, because the theme in this game really comes through. It's actually amazing. You've got a map of Westeros, and you're playing one of the different houses. The Starks, the Lannisters, Baratheons, Tyrell. They're all in here. Greyjoy. You pick randomly the house you're going to play, or you can work out an agreement on who's going to play who. And all that kind of positioning for power, that scratching to become, to sit on the Iron Throne, that is all in this game in spades. You will really feel the alliances that you will make. You will really feel betrayed when another house betrays you, and they will betray you. Just like in the books, just like in the series, betrayal is commonplace in Game of Thrones. So if you have trouble with that kind of conflict, if you don't enjoy diplomacy and negotiation, if you don't like games where you can be betrayed and stabbed in the back, then this is a game you need to avoid. I'm telling you, the conflict level and the diplomacy level in this game is sky high. But that's just where it should be based on the theme. At its heart, Game of Thrones is an area control game. So you need to like that kind of game to get the most out of it. If you don't consider yourself a gamer, but enjoyed games like Risk as a kid, then this is something you need to try. This is a game that's everything Risk could have been. It is far superior, but it includes that same kind of tension, but there's a lot more strategy and a lot more diplomacy involved in a Game of Thrones. The artwork, the graphic design, and the component quality in a Game of Thrones, and I'm talking about the second edition now, I'm not speaking to the first edition, the latest edition, is top notch all the way through. The box is very high quality. The board is fantastic. The map of Westeros is very detailed. It's easy to read. You have your informational stuff on the other side. You have tracks that you're going to bid on that I will talk about. Your supply, you will put your counter on the supply that shows you how many armies you can have in total on the board. And then there's a score track on the very bottom, and the Westeros or the Wildling track is at the very top. The board's so big you can't even see it. I don't even have room to really show you how big it is. The rulebook is very well done. It's high quality. It has plenty of illustrations, step by step, on how to run each phase of the game. Very well written. Most Fantasy Flight rulebooks are very good, but this one especially, you can learn the game from the rulebook if you haven't played it before. But it is, I don't know if it's a heavy game. It's a medium heavy maybe game, I would say. So it is better if somebody can teach you the game who's played it before, but you can learn this game from the rulebook. The components are fantastic. You've got these large tokens, the Iron Throne and the Raven and the Valyrian Sword, nice thick cardboard. You've got score markers for each house. You've got power tokens for each house, and they all have the fantastic signal of each house. The graphic design is fantastic, as I said earlier. You've got tokens, order tokens, and I'll talk about these a little bit. In the game, well, let me show you the rest of the components first. The cards, they're nice quality, they're linen finished. Then you've got your units that you, footmen, you've got knights, you've got boats, and you've got siege engines. So these components are really, they're nice, they're plastic, but they're a heavy marbleized plastic. They look really good on the board. I think the only complaint, some people may have trouble distinguishing the siege engines from the knights, because they are similar size and shape. So depending on your eyesight, that's something you want to make sure that you, when you're attacking or being attacked or threatened, that you really look and make sure you know what units are there. So that's the one maybe thing I could say about the components that would be negative. Other than that, very high quality through. Now, I can't really walk you through how to play the game here. I don't want to do that, but I will give you a general overview of how to play. There are certain regions that have a castle or stronghold. If you capture 7 of those, you win the game. If the game goes through all of its rounds without anybody doing that, then whoever has the most at the end of the game will win. Now, it's an area control game, so you're going to be trying to move your units into regions, especially regions that have castles and strongholds, to win. One of the brilliant things about this game is that it's not an area control where you can build your armies and turtle and then attack and try to take as much ground as you can. You've got to be very strategic in this game and really think about your turns and really try to make alliances with people that can help you. The game really drives that. You are limited, your armies are limited by their supply. So you have a little barrel with your symbol on it again that you're going to place on a track that will tell you how many standing armies you can have. You might be able to have 1 army of 3 units and 2 armies of 2 units. As you get more supply, you can have more armies and be more powerful. And your supply is dictated by how many regions on the board you control that have a supply barrel icon on them. But it only changes when a Westeros card is drawn that resets the supply. So during every round, you're going to turn 3 of these Westeros cards, and they're going to do different things. They might change the supply. They may have you bid on the influence tracks, which is another huge part of this game that makes it so interesting. One of the things you can do on your turn, well, I should talk about these tokens first. These order tokens, you're going to put them face down at the beginning of your turn. This one will let you support adjacent regions. So if you are attacking somebody, but you have a support token down next to the region you're attacking, this one, for example, would add 1 plus 1 because it has a bonus on it, right? So that would help you, that would add to your offensive ability. And you can throw these in with anybody. So if your neighbor who you want to help out this turn is attacking and you're adjacent with a support, you can say, I'm going to support you. And they will add this to their total offensive numbers. Or defensive. There are move tokens. This is when you want to move your army somewhere just to position yourself, or if you want to attack into somebody else's region. Consolidate power. This is what gives you power tokens in the game, and these are very important. This is what you bid on the influence tracks with, that I'll talk about briefly. Also, it's what you bid to try and beat the Wildlings when they attack, and that's a more cooperative thing where the whole kingdom needs to come together to defend against the Wildlings. Raid tokens, these are first. These will let you remove tokens of other players. So everybody's going to flip them at the same time, and raids will go first. So you can remove support tokens and other tokens. Makes it very interesting. And defense. If you know someone's going to attack you this turn and you put this down, you can add these points to defending against anybody who attacks that region. So those elements make the game, it really brings it up a level. So the blind bidding element here is very important. You are trying to gain position on these different influence tracks that are really going to help you in the game. But the power tokens are a limited resource, right? And you're going to need some to protect against the wildlings as well. If you lose against the wildlings, bad stuff happens. And if you bid the least and the wildlings win, something really bad is going to happen to you. So the first track is the Iron Throne. So whoever is first in this track is going to have this Iron Throne token. They are going to get to go first. That's a big advantage in this game. You are going to get to do your raids first. So if there's a raid next to your raid, you can get rid of it to protect yourself. You can get rid of support icons. You're going to have first choice. You are going to get to move first, attack first. So the initiative is important. The Iron Throne, whoever has this, also gets to break any ties besides combat ties. Everything else is up to you. You get to decide if there's a tie on an influence track, you get to decide who goes, right? So you're going to help those who have been nice to you or who you need on your side at the moment, and you're going to be not so nice to those who are currently in conflict with, right? Or who you are trying to slow down. The Valerian Blade can use this blade once on their round to add +1 to a combat. This can help you win a combat. You can also break combat ties. Your own, you will win all ties in combat, and you can break ties of others in combat. So again, you get to decide who wins when there's a tie, which can be very beneficial. The last one is the King's Court track, and you will get this Messenger Raven. This one is important because the higher you are on this track, the more order tokens that have a star on them you'll be able to use. These are more powerful. If you are too low on the track, you won't be able to use these at all. So it really limits what you can do and how powerful of an order you can give every turn. So it's important for that reason. But in addition, you get to choose one of two things every turn. You can, after everybody flips their orders, you can change one out of your own, which can really help you. Or you can look at the Wildling deck to see what's coming up next. And that will help you determine how much you should bid, how many power tokens you should bid to make sure you can beat the Wildlings, but not, you'll know how bad it's going to be if you lose the battle with the Wildlings. Again, you don't want to lose a battle with the Wildlings because something bad is going to happen. And if you bid the least, something really bad is going to happen. If you bid the most, something good is going to happen. So that's a great dynamic when everybody has to come together and fight off the Wildlings. And if you've blown all your power tokens on the influence tracks, then something bad's going to happen to you because you have nothing to give, right? So there's that management of those power tokens, getting the power tokens and then managing them to make sure you move up on the influence track to have advantages and to make sure that you can beat the Wildlings so you're not hurt. So really great dynamics all the way around. It's got that area control, great area control element where nobody can really build up their armies. You've got to get your supply first so you can make bigger armies, and then you need to manage it properly. You've got to build alliances in this game, but they're tenuous. They're always going to be tenuous, just like the books, just like in the books. The theme comes through so strong. I can't tell you how strong the theme comes through in this. It really does, because you have got to watch out for yourself. You really get that feeling that I want to get into that Iron Throne, and I need this person to help me get there. But as soon as I don't need them anymore, they're gone. I'm going to turn on them in a heartbeat, because it's going to come to a point where you're going to have to face off with each other. So you've got that constant those tenuous alliances constantly being built and destroyed in this game. So if you like conflict, you're going to love this game. If you don't like conflict in your games, then don't buy this game. It's not. Combat here is great too, because it's very simple math, right? You're adding up 1, 2 here, maybe another one there. Very simple math, but there's a lot to it, right? It's not just how many units I have versus how many units you have. It's how much support you can garner, and then you also have cards. And you can play a card that has a number that gives you a +3 or a +4 or +1 in battle, or has a special ability. I avoided playing a Game of Thrones, the board game, for quite some time because of my own prejudice about games that have been developed on top of an intellectual property, right? I think we've been trained over time that whenever a game comes out that's based on a popular intellectual property, whether it's a board game or a video game, they tend to be second rate, right? You get companies that push product out the door and they're hoping that the success of a particular intellectual property is going to sell it without putting the work into the actual game play itself. That's not the case here, and I was very surprised. This game is an excellent game, and not only that, but it really meshes with the intellectual property. It really is a Game of Thrones. You feel a Game of Thrones throughout the game as you play it, which I haven't seen very often. But I want to let you know that if you are had that same concern that I had before I played it, that you need to give this a try. This is an exception to the rule. A Game of Thrones is currently ranked number 25 out of all the games on Board Game Geek. This is ranked number 25, so that's an incredibly high rating. Its rating is over 8. It's like an 8 right now. It's an 8.02. Fantastic rating. If you look at the ratings, the comments people have left on this game, there is page after page after page of people who have rated this game a 10. But it's not for everybody. Let's look at some of the people who have rated this game a 1. We have Mark McGee. Mark says, this game makes me want to start punching people as soon as it hits the table. No other game does that. That can be true, and Mark makes a good point. If you are the type of gamer who loses their cool easily, if you don't like a lot of conflict in your game, if you can't take getting hosed very well, this is not a game for you. There is a lot of tension in this game. There's a lot of conflict in this game. There's a lot of negotiation and diplomacy in this game. If you don't like games that require you to be diplomatic and forge alliances and, more importantly, be able to break those alliances, then you're not going to do well at this game. There's definitely a strategic element in this game too, as far as where you're going to move your pieces, where are you going to play, when are you going to play a card, what cards are you going to hold back for later battles, what battles are you willing to give up to try and win the war. There's a lot of things to think about in this game. Preserving your power token so that you can gain influence on those influence track and make sure that you don't get stepped on when the wildlings attack. So there's a lot of things you need to think about. There's a lot of tactical decisions and strategic decisions that you need to make. But the negotiation and diplomacy part of this game is huge. That's what's going to enable you, whoever can forge the best deals to benefit themselves at the right times, they're going to be the people who do well at this game. So if you have issues with that kind of thing, then Game of Thrones, you should avoid this game because you are going to be backstabbed. If you're prone to getting upset in a game, and if you're prone to rage quits or flipping the table or that kind of stuff, stay away from it. Robin says the 4-player version of this game is completely unbalanced, apparently unplay-tested garbage. It looks like the 5-player will be as well, though I haven't tried it yet. Okay, so Robin also has a good point. Game of Thrones is a brilliant, amazing game with 6 players. It's for 3 to 6 players, that's what it says on the box. But the 3, 4, and 5-player games are unbalanced. In those games, sections of the boards are left clear for the most part. There's some tokens there that make them harder to take over, But whoever gets positioned the best in games less than 6 players is at an advantage. So it's not balanced with less than 6 players. And I think Fantasy Flight knows that. They're coming out with a 4-player variant for a Game of Thrones, the board game, because of this. So if you can't get 6 people together to play this, then it shouldn't be a game that you buy. You really need to have 6 players to play this game. So if you only play games with your family and there's 3 or 4 people in your family, or if you play 2-player games, or if you don't play games with a lot of people, if you play consistently with just 4 people, for example, this is not something you want to get. It's a totally different game with less than 6 people. So I can't say that strongly enough. To have this game, to get the most out of this game, you need to have 6 people. So keep that in mind when you're making your decision. It's also a long game, especially with, it says 2 to 4 hours on the box. But remember, you've got to play this with 6 people. So you can bump that up to 3 to 5 hours. And 3 hours is going to be tough. You can do it, and I've seen it done. And 5 hours is probably extreme. So it's really probably in the 4-hour range that you've got to dedicate for a game of Thrones. But if you do, and you've got 6 people, you are going to be engaged the whole time. It's a very interesting game. Everybody is doing their planning at the same time during the planning phase. So the AP thing isn't that bad because people tend to know what they're going to do before it gets to their turn. So AP isn't too big of a problem in this game, although it can be, right, with anybody, with certain people. But if you don't like conflict, if you don't like long games, if you can't play games with 6 people, if you can only play them with less than that number, then this is not a game you want to buy. But if you like conflict, if you can play longer games, or you like longer games, and you don't have much trouble getting 6 people together, then this is a game that has to be in your collection. So the bottom line here is Game of Thrones is a hardcore area control game with a lot of player interaction, a lot of negotiation, a lot of diplomacy, a lot of strategy and tactical decisions that you have to make. There's a lot to think about with the bidding and the alliances and the positioning on the board. Lots of things that are going to go through your head as you play this game. And getting those 7 castles is hard. But boy, when you can do it and you can win this game, it feels great because you really have to work at it. Not just your strategy and not just, with your tactical moves, but also with the alliances you were able to temporarily forge when you needed them. So you feel good when you win a game of Thrones because it's well earned.